Oh, hi there. I didn't even know you were there. I was just reading this book here, Wizard of Oz. And of course, as you can see here, I'm dressed up as I am the great and powerful Oz. Thought it was a good act. Anyway, The Wizard of Oz is a really good book. It was written by a man who goes by the name of L. Frank Baum, who had a heck of imagination. He kind of thinks of himself as some sort of humbug, per se. And of course, he made up the story about a young girl named Dorothy Gale who lives in a small town of Kansas and lives with her aunt and uncle until all of a sudden this big tornado just picks up her house and takes her into a world beyond ours called Oz. And Oz is a world unlike any other nobody never seen. Talking animals, talking scarecrows, Tin Man, and all the others. And of course, throughout her journey, she wants to get back home, and the only way to do that is to meet the wonderful Wizard of Oz himself, who lives in the Emerald City. And of course, in the book, she meets the Scarecrow, who is looking for a brain, and the Tin Man, who is looking for a heart, and a Cowardly Lion, who all he wants is courage. Anyway, it's a really good book. I saw the movie when I was a little kid, and I watched it about dozens and dozens and dozens of times. But the book is a lot more interesting than the movie because there's a whole lot more into the story that not many people even know. Like, for an example, how did Scarecrow become the Scarecrow? Well, it says here that he was created by a Scarecrow maker and used some kind of a magical paint to paint his face, and when he painted the eyes, he can see. And of course, he painted the mouth, he can talk. Painted the nose, he can smell. And of course, as the Scarecrow maker had finally created him, there was a crow in his shoulder, and he says, "You can't scare us, you don't have a brain." So therefore, he thought if he had a brain, he can be able to scare the crows off the field. And that's how his journey goes. And of course, the origin of the Tin Man, right here, he was in love by a beautiful Munchkin. And of course, the young girl who's a Munchkin that the Tin Man falls in love with, her mother doesn't like him, and he doesn't want his daughter to be married. So she asked the evil, wicked witch to do something to him. So what the wicked witch did, she enchanted his axe, cut off his leg, and then the tinsmith came over and gave him a tin leg. And then the witch enchanted the axe, and it keeps on cutting off his arm, and his legs, and his whole torso, and his head was kind of scarred up. And of course, the axe got him right in the middle of his chest, took away his heart. And as the tinsmith just made his entire body all made of tin, he finally discovered that the tinsmith forgot to give him a heart. So if he thinks if he can find himself a heart, he would finally go back to his beloved, beautiful Munchkin girl that he fell in love with, and therefore feel love once again. So sweet. And it's so sweet. And of course, there is also the Cowardly Lion. And the reason why he's a Cowardly Lion, well, he was raised to being a coward. That's all. That's all it is. And as for the wizard, well, his story is pretty interesting. You see, he's not really a wizard. He's actually a magician and an inventor. And he was from Kansas, just like Dorothy. But unlike hiding inside of a house while a big tornado comes, he gets picked up by the hot air balloon and ended up in Oz. And of course, at first, he wanted to find his way back home, but people think of him as a wizard because of his magician's tricks, because he was a magician from a carnival. And everybody thought of him as the great wizard, so therefore he stayed in the Emerald City as the Wizard of Oz. So therefore, he's not really a wizard, he's just a magician, just a guy with magic tricks. That's why I have a wand here, to let people think I have a magical wand. And of course, there's a whole lot more into this story that nobody never even thought of. like the flying monkeys, they were only being controlled by whoever wears the hat that they wear, and can only make about 3 demands for the monkey. And after the 3 demands are gone, then the monkey had to find another owner from that hat. And also, Glinda, in the original story, wasn't exactly the Witch of the North. The Witch of the North was a short, fat Munchkin woman who protects the Munchkins. And Glinda was the Witch of the South. That's the difference right there. And of course, the slippers in the original story, in the original book here, the slippers were actually silver, not ruby. They thought, in the movie, they thought they make them ruby so they can be more glamorous or something. The book was really good. Any of you who want to be interested in reading the book instead of watching the movie, be my guest. I ain't stopping you. And of course, L. Frank Baum had wrote other stories as well. There are like 14 other stories, like Land of Oz, Ozma Oz, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, Road to Oz, Emerald City of Oz, Patchwork Girl of Oz, Tick-Tock of Oz, Scarecrow of Oz, Ricky Tikki of Oz, The Last Princess of Oz, Tin Woodsman of Oz, and The Magic of Oz, and of course, Glinda of Oz. And of course, the other stories of the other Oz stories was also written by L. Frank Baum's son, who continued on the legacy, but they're not as good as the original series of books. And of course, there were tons of movies I kept on figuring out and finding all of a sudden. Like, they did a sequel called, Disney owned the rights of The Wizard of Oz and made Return of Oz. And it was a sequel to The Wizard of Oz, but they combined 2 stories because the second book didn't have Dorothy in it. They combined Land of Oz and Ozma of Oz. Combined the 2 together, and that's when they made that Return of Oz. Not many people know about it, but it's a cult classic, and it's really good. I watched it myself and loved it. And of course they made, Sam Raimi, the guy who created Spider-Man, he did a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, and it was called Oz, the Great and Powerful, starring the Wizard. Backstory. And of course there were tons of other stories that I cannot continuing on telling you about. And of course there were other stories I've heard in the audiobook and also read, but I don't want to bore you in the rest of the story because it's going to take all day. So anyway, that's my review. I am the Wizard of Oz, aka Michael Grimm. And always remember, there's no place like home. Well, that's all I have to say. Somewhere, oh, no, that's getting old. I think I'm going to whistle on another song. It's more up to date. In case you're wondering what I'm whistling at, it's the Harry Potter theme song.